Okay, why is the Feast of First Fruits, also called Pentecost, a week-long feast? I know a lot of you are new to this YouTube channel, and so welcome. And there's a few things on here that we do, which is teaching. Of course, many of you have come to this channel based on things related to the temple, of course, which we do, but we also predominantly have a teaching channel. And we follow the feasts of the Most High, of Yahweh. And it's important for us to understand those as we enter this era, this time of the coming and the second coming of Iesous Christos, Alpha and Omega, because there's a restoration of things. Now, let's talk a little bit about Pentecost. Okay, you have a whole section of Christianity called Pentecostals, right? Well, they don't celebrate the Feast of Pentecost. It's a feast. Some of you might not even know this. It's a feast in the Bible, yes. One time a year. Now, let's talk about Pentecost. This is the Ecclesia. When we say church, and you read in the Bible it says church, this in Greek is Ecclesia, assembly. So this is how the Ecclesia started. It started in an assembly in the upper room. Now, what happened? What happened then, if you remember, is the disciples, 120, gathered waiting. Now, what were they doing? They were waiting 50 days. Okay, well, actually 10 days. Christ ascended on the 40th day, and they were waiting another 10 days. He said, wait for the promise of the Father. And you can see here we have a lamp. I'll show you a close-up of this. And what happened on Pentecost? Well, we had a rushing, mighty wind, and there appeared on their forehead flames. Why? Their people and the fire of the Holy Spirit, the lamps, as if cloven tongues, appeared on their forehead. What does this mean? Well, these are people, and the people are being lit. They're being lit by the Holy Spirit. Okay? There is appearing, okay, that people could see a lamp, a flame. That's because the person is part of a candlestick. Okay? I actually have a menorah of 7 of these, even out here in the wilderness. And what is this? The Son of Man stands in the midst of the 7 candlesticks. A candlestick is not just a single stick with one candle on it. It's a menorah, and a menorah has 7. Okay? So the starting off of the ecclesia is what? The people are being lit like lamps. Okay? This is amazing, because these are the same promises he said in the last days. Let your lamps be burning, right? Well, that happened. And the people spoke in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. And the people heard the languages from when they gathered from all over the known world. They gathered in Jerusalem. I'm here in Jerusalem. At the gathering of Shavuot, means weeks. Okay, this is a very important word for us to understand. It's a feast of weeks. Thus, the feast is a week. Okay? Now, the disciples, they gathered, and the fire appeared upon their foreheads. Why? They're being sealed. They're being marked by fire. They're being lit like a candlestick, like a menorah. Okay, and then in Revelation, we see 7 menorahs, which are the 7 ecclesia, the 7 churches, right? Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Okay, that's the ecclesia. All right, but what's happened? They're assembling after 50 days. Now, what we do on this channel, guys, is we keep a calendar called the calendar of Enoch. And the calendar of Enoch you have, how many weeks are in a year? You have 52 weeks in a year, right? Well, 52 times 7 is 364. So the Enoch calendar has 364 days in it. Now, the Feast of Weeks, or Hag Feast of Shavuot, okay, is a day. It was the day of Pentecost, right? But it's also a week. Now, this is more of a mystery. This is more of a deep thing. Now, it's up to you with what you do with this information, okay? I actually don't care what you do. When God says, worship me, do I want to worship for a day or a week or a month or a year or my whole life? Guys, I've been doing this vacation with the Most High God for years. Traveling full-time years since 2015. The fall of 2015. Okay, so how many years is that? It's like 4.5 years or whatever. So when God says, come, let's go on a feast. Let's go on a journey. Let's go on an Exodus. I'm excited. And look at this. I've been homeless, and now I'm in Jerusalem for Shavuot. Am I going to walk all the way and come all the way to Jerusalem for one day? No, it's a week. All right, we're going to get through the scriptures. We're going to go through everything. And ladies, I'm going to just tell you this. I don't like to say this, but it's true. We're going through charts. We're going through things, and 90% of you will not understand. Okay, let's just come to terms with that. There's nothing I can do. There's absolutely nothing I can do. I can show you all these videos. I have a whole playlist on the Enoch calendar. I'll say, watch these videos, and you'll still say, Leland, I don't understand. Well, what am I supposed to do? Okay. If you keep these feasts and you are impressed upon to do so, you'll have other people ask you questions. Well, why? Okay, and you won't know. You'll just say, well, I follow Leland's calendar and it just says so. Well, I'm a teacher. I want you to know. I want you to be able to understand how to explain it to someone else. All right? But some of these charts, you just won't. There's just nothing I can do. Okay? But it's very, very exciting. It's very, very amazing. So all of you that are new, that have evil things to say about the feast or whatever, it's just ignorant. You don't really understand the Messianic era. In the millennium, we're going to keep the feasts. All the nations come to Jerusalem to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And there's going to be Passover. And there's going to be the Hag Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. Okay? Now, for the children of Israel, they were to come to Jerusalem 3 times a year. All right? Passover, Feast of Weeks, Tabernacles. Okay? All those are feasts that are in the millennial reign of Christ. All right? Now, it's the Feast of Weeks, and what we're talking about here is this is not a whole teaching on the Feast of Weeks. Okay? The Feast of Weeks started with the Ecclesia. It started with the assembly, the 120 assembled, and they have flames on their foreheads, right? Why? The Holy Spirit is lighting them and thus birthing the Ecclesia, the age, okay, of the believers in Isos Christos. Glory to God. So, now, what does it mean in the last days? We also want to keep this Feast of Weeks. Okay, so even if a lot of the details we're going to get into, we get into the details. It's a teaching channel, guys, okay? But if you don't understand all the details and people ask you, why is it a week? It's a Feast of Weeks. Is that hard to understand? It's not a Feast of Days. It's Feast of Weeks. Okay, so the disciples gathered and they waited and they came to this 50th day. Okay, so the emphasis is on this 50th day. You do something called counting the omer. Oh, it's like a dry measure. So you're counting the omer. And you're counting 50 days, counting each day. And then on the 50th day, then there is this Hag Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. So it also says there are 7 Shabbats, 7 Sabbaths. Well, 7 times 7 is 49. Okay? So you're counting 7 Sabbaths from the Feast of First Fruits. Well, Feast of First Fruits is when Christ was resurrected. So from resurrection, you count 50 days. That will then bring you to the first day of the week. Okay? So that was yesterday. I don't know when I'll be able to upload this video, but that was yesterday. Okay? Now let's remember, in the upper room, when they were there were flames, right? They were being lit, the menorah. There was also a great shaking, so that the place where they assembled was shaken. All right? Well, we just had a great earthquake yesterday. An 8.0 magnitude earthquake that took place in Peru, and this is the shaking that's taking place over the whole earth at Christ's coming. These are all the signs marking the precise days. Okay, so that earthquake was a shaking that took place on the Feast of First Fruits, which is also called the Feast of Weeks. Okay, so you count the Omer. So you count till you get to the 50th day. Okay, now let's talk about what this 50 days. Okay, that's what Pentecost, Penta, 5. Okay, 50 days. Well, that 50th day is also the 50th week. Now, what other time can you think of where you have the number 50? Jubilee, right? Okay, what is Jubilee? Well, you're counting 7 years, Shemitah, or 7 years. You have 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. 7 Shemitahs, okay, is 49 years. The 50th year, 50, is what? A Jubilee. Okay, so this is a cycle, a principle of counting 7 sevens, 49. So it's 7 times 7 plus 1, which is 7 times 7 is 49, plus 1 is Jubilee. Okay, we can also see in the counting of the Omer, it's 7 times 7 weeks to come to Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. Okay, coming to the 50th day. Well, that 50th day is also marking something very amazing, and that is the 50th week. So the Feast of Weeks is a week. Now, remember, the children of Israel to come to Jerusalem 3 times a year, right? Pesach, which is Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles. All right, we have 52 weeks in a year, right? Well, those other 2 feasts are Passover and Tabernacles, okay? If we don't count those, now we have 50 weeks in a year, okay? Can you see that? Now, if you follow the moon, you cannot do this. That's why the Jews don't know about this. This is very amazing. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, guys, is the only other place you'll hear what you're hearing now. To the best of my knowledge, it's the information I've found through studying the Enoch calendar and in the Dead Sea Scrolls that just came out last year, okay? We released this information to you years ago, all right? But those 2 sources are the only 2 sources that will tell you what you're hearing, all right? And that is, what they did is they counted 50 days and they got to Shavuot. Well, then they counted another 50 days and another 50 days. They called it the Feast of Corn, Wine, and Oil. So they counted 50 days for corn, 50 days for wine, 50 days for oil. All right? And so what they're doing is they're acknowledging that these 50 days is a cycle. Okay? And that's what we've discovered on this channel, is that a Shavuot, or Saba Shavuot, which is 7 weeks, is a cycle that takes place in a year. And now what you have is 1 week, which is a 50th week. That's Shavuot. Okay? Now, it takes some studying to understand this. For many of us that are English-speaking and reading Bible translations, this is not going to be apparent to you unless you do some studying. Okay. Now, let's talk about a couple things with the Feast of Weeks. Now, you can see I'm wearing this. I'm not just wearing this to look silly. But it says this in Exodus 34:22, you shall observe the feast of weeks. Okay, Hag, Shavuot, the feast of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the years to Tufika. Now what a Tufika is, that's a circuit, it's a cycle. So there's a cycle of first fruits throughout the year. All right? And this is what we find in Exodus 34:22. And let's read some other descriptions of this cycle, this circuit. Okay? Now, Jeremiah 5:24, let us now fear the Lord, that give us rain, both the former and the latter rain, in his season that reserves us the appointed weeks, Shavuot, of the harvest. So there's cycles of the year of the harvest. Okay, there's also cycles of the year of the cycles of the year will keep us at the appointed feasts. Okay, that's what it's talking about there, the appointed times, right? Well, these are what we see in Leviticus 23. It's talking about the Feast of Weeks, and it says, when you shall reap the harvest of your land, and you shall not make clean riddance of the corners of the field. Now, the reason I'm wearing this garment is because you would have ribbons at the corners of your garment, 4 corners. And so here you have a instruction, when you reap of the field, you shall not make clean reaping of the corners of your field. You shall not gather them at your harvest, but you shall leave them to the poor, the stranger. I am the Lord your God, or Yahweh Elohim. Okay, Yahweh Elohim. So you're supposed to leave the corners of the field. Well, why is that? He could have just said, okay, leave, like 20% of your field. Okay? No, he said, leave a corner. And he said, in your garments, put a corner. Well, why? Because you have 4 corners of the year. They're the solar cycles. Okay? That's what the Tukifa is. I have a whole other video on the Tukifa. Many of the things I'm saying you may have heard from the first time, but I have other videos talking about these things. I'm not going to repeat the same things just because you're new. You got to watch the old videos on this stuff, all right? So watch the Tukifa, and there you'll see we're talking about this garment. The corners of your garment, the corners of your field during first fruits. So the things in the feast are symbolic for us to try to understand, what does this mean? Okay? Yes, there are literal things, but they are also symbolic in nature for us to understand as we keep these feasts. Okay? Now, what is a great disadvantage for us is we do not read the original language. We don't read the original Hebrew. We don't read the real Aramaic. So sometimes a word is very, very important. And for us, this word is, of course, Tufika, where we saw the circuit of the year, and also Shabuot, okay, is really a better pronunciation, or Shavuot. Now, this is in the Strong's Concordance, number Strong's H7620. And where this word appears, it's weeks. It's basically saying week, but plural. Okay, so remember when Daniel said, unto the restoring and building of Jerusalem, there will be 62 weeks, 62 Shavuot, okay, and 7 weeks, 7 Shavuot. All right, so that's an example of its use. But we also saw it there in Jeremiah 5:24. He reserves us the appointed Shavuot for the harvest. Okay, now let's look into the verses and details of why this feast is a week long. Okay, in Ezekiel chapter 45, verse 21, these are the feasts of the millennial kingdom. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month, you shall have Passover. Okay, so he's talking about Passover here. Now, this is where we have a great disadvantage, because then it says a feast of weeks. So again, we have this word Shavuot, of days. Day is yam, and plural is yamim. Okay? And so we have this Feast of Weeks. So it's saying Passover, Feast of Weeks. And then it says, unleavened bread shall be eaten. Okay, now your English translations may just say 7 days, but that word 7 is weeks. Okay? And so 7 is not a good pronunciation, because if we pay close attention, now we can see 3 feasts mentioned: Passover, Feast of Week, and unleavened bread. Okay? And then it goes on to describe other feasts like tabernacles. Okay? Now, why is this feast 7 days? Okay, when we look at the offerings that were part of these feasts, and we go to Numbers chapter 28, we have a section in Numbers chapter 28, which is talking about Passover, or unleavened bread, and Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. And then it says lots of details. I'm not going to read all the details. This is how you offer an oxen and a lamb and a goat, and this is the percentages of meals, and lots of details. We'll read some of the details because they repeat every day. But it says in verse 24, after this manner shall you offer daily throughout 7 days. Now this is talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, so it's, of course, unleavened bread we know is 7 days. And the meat sacrificed by fire, a sweet savor unto the Lord, shall be offered beside the continual burnt offerings and his drink offerings. And on the 7th day shall be a holy convocation, and you shall do no servile work. All right? So on the 1st day and on the 7th day, you are holy convocation, or it's like a Shabbat, or a day of rest. Okay? So it's talking about 7 days. Okay? 7 days. And then it says, on the day of first fruits, when you bring in your meat offering unto the Lord, after your weeks are out, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work. Now, what it does is it does say a day, okay? But it's almost like it's saying, okay, repeat the instructions of 7 days, okay, that you did in unleavened bread. Repeat them in first fruits. It doesn't actually say that, but it's implying it, okay? By saying, okay, when you bring in your meat offerings unto the Lord, when your weeks are out, so you have to count the weeks to find when this particular week is. Okay, so you're counting, so that 50th day is also the 50th week. And you would repeat the same offering. But you shall offer a burnt offering unto the Lord, 2 bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year, and the meat offerings, and the flour mingled with oil, 3/10 deals of 1 bullock, 2/10 deals unto a ram. Okay, sorry, the video cut off in the hot sun. But you shall offer 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year, and their meat offering with the flour mingled with oil, 3/10 deals of a bullock, 2/10 deals of a ram, several tenths deal from a lamb, throughout 7 lambs, and 1 kid of goats to make atonement for you. And you shall offer them beside the continual burnt offerings. So this is a repeat of the offering that you're supposed to do each day, okay, for 7 days, okay? So remember in Numbers 28:24, in this manner shall you offer daily throughout your 7 days. Now, yes, that was talking about unleavened bread, but it seems to be applying that the offering that's repeated every day for 7 days is repeated not just for a single day here in the first fruits, but that it's implying these 7 days should be repeated in unleavened bread and should be repeated in first fruits. Okay? Now, I don't know how to say that or make that any more clear than what we're saying. In the 7th day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work, or it's a Sabbath, basically. Okay? So, what we have is a Sabbath on day 1 and on day 7. Okay, well, let's just take a look at the calendar. When we look at the calendar, you see in green there it says Feast of Weeks. All right, at the time of the recording, it's 9, the 9th day of the 3rd month. Now that 50 is, as you can see, 50 Feast of Weeks. So it's the 50th week. and it's the 50th day. That was yesterday. So that was a Shabbat. That was a Sabbath. Okay? Now the green area here is this feast. Okay, so then it's 7 days. Well, the day that it ends, the seventh day, is Shabbat. Okay? But basically this is when this happened. So yesterday was the 26th, today's the 27th of May. All right, and then this would be this time, and then the last day would be there, and you can see the pre-cycle is Yeshua. I mean, this is amazing information. So it appears that the various offerings are not just for a single day, but they repeat. Okay, so this is the week of first fruits. And what it was talking about before is the week of unleavened bread. Okay, so you have Passover, they're the 14th in blue. Then you have unleavened bread. Okay, and then here's first fruit. So this is when you begin counting. This is day 1. So you count from this day 50 days. Counting. We have Christ ascends here. Wait from the promise of the Father. So the disciples wait another 10 days to the 50th day, the Feast of Weeks. Okay? Now, let's illustrate this in another way, another chart. Okay? Here. And we'll have to just reposition the camera a little bit to get this full screen. All right. Here we go. Now, this is a way of trying to graphically explain to you this 50th week. This is so amazing. It's so exciting. Now, what we have in the center here, 1 through 12, right? Well, these are the months of the year. And what we're observing is a pattern of weeks, remember? Okay, in the first month is that's when Passover takes place, and then the Feast of First Fruits, you begin counting Sabbaths, Shabbat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me get something that doesn't mess up our focus. Okay, we got 1, counting Shabbats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, counting this one. I'm sorry. We start with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so this cycle, starting from the yellow, we count 7 Sabbaths, and we get to the 50th. Now those were weeks. Okay, so then what happens is the week after that, you continue counting. You go through a cycle, and then you count another 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Now what you have is a cycle of weeks throughout the year, which correspond to certain months. You see that? So now what you have is the year has 7, a cycle of 7 days. Okay, that's how you can, that's in Daniel's timeline, you can have a week be a year. Okay? So that's what this does. So you can also use this to count the days. When you count the Omer, right? You count day 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 49. Okay, and you can see right there, 49 days. Then the 50th day. You can also use this for the Jubilee, right? You could say, okay, Shemitah 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shemitah 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shemitah 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shemitah 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shemitah 5. Shemitah 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 49 years. Then what? Jubilee. Okay? So that's why this 50 is more than 50 days. It's more than 50 years. It's also 50 days in a week. Okay? Hopefully you can see that. Now that's what this is wheels within the wheels, guys, okay? So we have other videos on this if this is confusing to you. This is the part I told you you wouldn't understand, ladies. Nothing I could do. But that is what this is. It's a week, okay? And then there's other weeks throughout the year. Okay, what else can we learn about the Feast of First Fruits? Well, let's go to Deuteronomy 16. Okay, Deuteronomy 16 verse 10. And you shall keep the Feast of Weeks unto Yahweh Elohim, a tribute of a freewill offering in your hand, which you shall give unto the Lord your God, according to the Lord your God has blessed you, and you shall rejoice. You're supposed to be happy. Rejoice. Okay? Rejoice. Imagine that. He knew you'd be so miserable and grouchy. You had to be commanded to rejoice. You want to rejoice a day? Or you want to rejoice 7 days? Rejoice before Yahweh Elohim. Your son, your daughter, your maidservant, the Levite within your gates, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow that are among you, and the place which Yahweh Elohim has chosen to place his name. Okay, now, I'm here in Jerusalem. I'm here in the forest. I'm outside of Jerusalem, of course. But where's the place he chose to place his name? New Jerusalem. It's not necessary that you come here, guys. This assembly, as we assemble around the Lamb, it's a Lamb, okay? It's the Son of Man, okay, who's in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. Can you see that? How many lamps are on a candlestick? These are the lamps, okay? There's 7 lamps on a menorah, okay? There's 7 Ecclesia, 7 churches. So how many lamps? That's 49, okay? We count what? 49 days to get to what? First fruits. Is first fruits a day? It's a week. To what? Rejoice. To remember that you were a bondservant in Egypt. To remember that you were part of the beast system, serving Satan. Okay? But he has brought you out. That's what this feast, all these feasts are to remind us that Christ has died for our sins and that we are not part of the beast system. To overcome. Okay? And to rejoice. To rejoice. Why? Because of what he has done for us. For being a bondservant in Egypt, he has freed us. Okay? And this is not, things. This is a living word. Okay? We're a living word. So this is what Christ was forming as an ecclesia. 7 churches. Okay? Each church having 7 lamps. And we could see that in Pentecost, they had lamps upon their forehead, right? Okay? These lamps. I'll hold it in my hand, but it's hot. So guys, thanks for watching. For, like I said, many of you that are new to this channel, what I'll do is I'll have links to the tufika, the garment. I'll have links to the Enoch calendar. I'll put a couple videos to give you some basics of the Enoch calendar. Here you can see a principle of the Feast of Weeks that you can only observe in the Enoch calendar. Okay, we've seen this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We've explained this to you, this cycle of 7 during the year in this 50th week. So thank you for watching. As we always say, watch and pray that you be accounted worthy to escape all these things and stand before the Son of Man. Okay, here we go, guys. We are waving the palm branches. Okay, they are robed in white robes and they are waving palm branches. So we're waving palm branches. This is the heave offering. The heave offering. that we find in Numbers 15. We are waving the branches. We are waving these according to Revelation 7.